Deep in the woods, there lives a man with powerful connections to the Moon Kingdom. Few know his name, and fewer dare to speak it aloud. Who is this mysterious figure? And how is he connected to a forgotten age of the Moon Kingdom's history? Let's find out. Hey Moonies, welcome back to the channel. I'm Sarah Luscious, and I would like to thank you for being so patient with me after this prolonged absence. So to make it up, I'm doing 10 days to Halloween. So October 20th through 30th, I will be doing some creepy videos, and then on October 30th, a special surprise video just for you guys. So to start off, we're going to be reading a supposed to be creepy Sailor Moon fanfic called Legends of the Lightstorm. This is from fanfiction.net by Motrox. I can put a link to the entire story below if you would like. There are 9 chapters, and I'll be reading a chapter a day. Those will cover the first 9 days, and I have a different video for the 10th day. So, without further ado, let us get started. Serena pressed the last bandage into place, wincing as lances of pain shot through charred flesh. You wouldn't have to do that if you'd just use your head for once, Luna scolded from atop the bathroom sink. Sorry, I panicked, Serena replied, putting away the bandages. No one ever wins a fight by panicking, Luna reminded her. If Tuxedo Mask hadn't shown up at the last minute... Immediately, Luna regretted mentioning that name. Serena was instantly lost in a daydream, the specifics of which Luna didn't need to guess. Luna turned away and sighed wearily. In the short time she had known Serena, the newly activated Sailor Moon had managed to almost get herself killed more times than she cared to think about. If not for the mysterious figure Tuxedo Mask, Sailor Moon would have died on her very first mission. As useful as he was, Tuxedo Mask was an unpredictable factor, and he caused a question to form on the edge of Luna's mind that she didn't dare to think about too much. What if Sailor Moon needed Tuxedo Mask and he didn't appear? Looking back at the still daydreaming Serena, Luna studied her latest battle wounds. The burns caused by the latest attack from the Negaverse looked more than painful, and the accumulated injuries were getting hard to hide from Serena's family. Perhaps if Serena had done some actual training. No, Luna decided. They had been down that road before. Every time she brought it up, Serena had simply shown little to no interest in becoming a better Sailor Scout. Every time she had been shut down, Luna had felt a stab of fear, knowing it could very well mean the next battle would be her last. There was simply no way to convince her to become stronger. But there was him. Luna found her thoughts drifting to a place she hadn't ventured in many years. She knew it was a long shot, and there was every chance he would never agree to it. But if she didn't try, and Serena died because of it... Serena! What? Serena snapped out of it, spilling the bottle of anesthetic she'd been using. There's someone I'd like you to meet, Luna said, wondering already if this was a good idea. Ooh, is he handsome? I suppose some people thought so. Well, what's his name? As far as I know, his current name is Jason Shepard. The look on Serena's face said it all. Luna instantly regretted mentioning him, but it was too late. When can I meet him? That's the problem. He lives very far away from here, and his house is hard to get to. Seeing Serena's interest fading, Luna quickly added, many years ago he used to work for the Moon Kingdom. I think he might be able to help. Serena considered this. You said he's handsome, right? Yes. When do we leave? Serena and Luna hiked through the woods, their muscles aching. Serena stopped under a tree and pulled a handful of candy bars out of her backpack. Luna ignored the chewing sound as she drank some rainwater collected in a fallen leaf. As she drank, she hoped, not for the first time, that this entire mission was not a colossal waste of time. It had been fortunate that Serena had a long weekend from school that week. Serena had managed to convince her family that she would be having a weekend-long sleepover at a friend's house, and had set off with Luna before anyone had asked too many questions. After that, it was a simple matter to use the disguise pen to transform herself into a hiker and hire a taxi. The taxi dropped them off far from the city, and Serena and Luna set off into the woods. Hour after hour, they trudged through the underbrush. More than once, Serena stopped for snacks, greatly hindering their progress. But Luna's aching paws prevented her from complaining. More hours passed. Insects buzzed. Sweat poured from Serena's forehead. Muscles ached and blisters broke. And they hiked on. At long last, they reached an opening in the trees. Serena flopped down under a tree to catch her breath, but Luna dragged herself forward to investigate. Before them was a large, tranquil lake. No birds or wildlife could be heard among the trees surrounding the water. At the edge of the lake stood an old cabin. At Luna's insistence, Serena walked up to the door and knocked. For a long moment, nothing happened. Serena raised her hand to knock again when a clacking noise emanated from within and the door opened. In the doorway stood a man. The man was tall and thin, with a healthy amount of muscle covering his otherwise bare bones. He was dressed in a homespun clothes, and the kind that would have been found in the United States during their frontier days. His ageless face was clean-shaven and skin flawless. But his eyes, something wasn't quite right about his eyes. They bore a strange sort of weight to them, as if they'd seen too much of the cruelties of the world. They bore no malice, only an ageless, ancient tranquility. But his most striking feature was the colors of his hair. On each side were twin streaks of brilliant silver that cut through the blackest black hair Serena had ever seen. Serena stared at him for a moment. "Hello." Jason, for that's his name, said nothing. Instead, he looked down to Serena's right, where Luna was sitting. Luna, not entirely sure what to say, asked, Is this a bad time?" Jason's face hardened. In a smooth move, he stepped back and slammed the door shut, causing a thunderous crash. Serena stared at the door blankly. "Was it something I said?" Luna sighed to herself. She had been afraid of this, but knew exactly why Jason reacted as he did. She couldn't blame him for it. "No, it's not you. Let me try." She walked closer to the door. "Jason Shepard, the Negaverse has returned and the Moon Kingdom is destroyed. We are all it stands between it and total destruction of the Earth." She paused, letting her words sink in. "This is our Sailor Moon, champion of justice. She has only recently unlocked her powers, but lacks training and discipline." Serena made a face at Luna. "You are the last surviving member of the Moon Kingdom's forces. After all this time, we need your help." Silence descended. Nothing stirred, but Luna kept her gaze fixed on the wooden door. After a minute, the door slowly creaked open. Jason studied Luna. Luna evenly returned his gaze. After a moment, he turned to Serena. His gaze swept over her as if studying a weapon. For a second, Serena couldn't decide whether to be flattered or annoyed. She looked at his features, thinking that Luna hadn't lied, and that he was handsome in his own right. That in mind, she decided to be flattered, held out her hand, and said, "Hi, I'm Serena." Jason said nothing, nor did he shake her hand. Instead, he silently stepped aside and gestured to the door. The inside of the cabin smelled of a pleasant combination of earth and lumber. A small fire was crackling in the fireplace, and the meat roasting on the pit. On the walls were mounted a few old weapons, apparently hand-forged. In the corner was handcrafted spinning wheel, which Jason had apparently used to make his clothes. Against one wall was a wooden rocking chair, to which Jason gestured as Serena and Luna entered. Serena sat in the chair, her gaze hungrily coming to rest on the meat in the fireplace. Jason saw her stare and nodded his consent when she turned back to him. Serena picked up the spit and bit into a hot hunk of meat. The meat burned the inside of her mouth, but she didn't care. Flavor coursed through her taste buds as rich spices in the meat exploded to her tongue. She swallowed and bit into it again. Luna sat on the floor looking at Jason. Jason sat on the edges of his handmade bed and stared back. At length, Luna said, "You've done well for yourself." For the first time, Jason spoke. His voice was faint and strained, as if he hadn't uttered a single word aloud in years. But though the volume was low, he carried all the weight and authority of one who had seen countless years of combat and wasn't pleased at that very moment. "And I hoped I'd never see you again." Serena looked up from the meat, still chewing half a mouthful. Jason was staring at Luna with the air of a man confronted with an old enemy. Luna returned the gaze, although there was less fire in her eyes. "I wouldn't have come if there was any other choice," Luna told him. "You shouldn't have remembered my name." Jason's voice was a few decibels lower than it had been, yet it carried the indescribable power of an age-long past. "Believe me, I didn't want to. But we need your help now more than ever, and there is no one else." Jason looked at Serena, who waved a grease-covered hand sheepishly. This is Sailor Moon. I know she doesn't have the dignity she did in all those pictures and history books, but she is the champion of the moon. Serena bit into a sharp bone in the meat, stabbing herself in a very sensitive spot in the gums. With a cry of pain, she started backwards, causing meat to fly up and stick to the ceiling, and the rocking chair fell over with it. Someone else might have cracked a smile at the odd sight, or maybe even chuckled, but Jason merely looked back at Luna. "Believe me, I know," Luna said, embarrassed. "But that's why we need you. Without your help..." Jason stood up. "Let's talk in private." He walked out the door with Luna at his heels. He pulled the door shut and turned to Luna. "Even if I felt any loyal to you people at all, I can't ignore what happened." Luna had been worried about this. "I realize nothing I say can undo the past, and that's why I can't do anything except beg for forgiveness." "How can I forget what the Moon Kingdom did to me?" Luna searched for a good answer and found none. "I understand, but I can't answer that." She leaned forward. "But Sailor Moon is innocent. She wasn't there. As far as she knows, that period in history doesn't even exist." "I can't imagine why you didn't tell her." "Please, Jason. Sailor Moon nearly died in the last few battles. She only survived by luck, and it won't last forever. She needs you." Luna stared into Jason's eyes. "She's done nothing to you, and you are the only one who can help her. I'm begging you, please don't condemn her to death for what we did." Jason considered this. After a moment, he said, "There's not much I can do for her, Luna. I can't transform anymore. My powers are gone." Luna stared at him in disbelief. "You mean..." Jason concentrated. A slight tinkle ran through his body, and a flash of energy shot across his skin before sputtering and weakly dying. "I'm useless now. There's nothing for me to do." "Then teach her. Show her how to become like you once were." She thought for a second. "What was it you called yourself? Lightstorm?" His expression didn't change, but eyes revealed an inner torrent of pain, anger, and sadness. "Let Lightstorm live on through her, Jason. Use your knowledge to help Sailor Moon. If for no other reason, then do it because an innocent will die without you." He pondered, wrestling internally with his emotions. Painful memories surfaced behind his eyes, and the torment of centuries past washed through him once more. He knew Serena didn't know what he did. She hadn't seen his life. But still, she was part of the long-dead Moon Kingdom, a civilization whose very name caused Jason agony. But she was innocent. She hadn't committed the crimes her people had. She didn't even know of Jason's era. Maybe this time things would be different. Jason hadn't felt it in a long time, but he sensed something inherently good about Serena. Perhaps she deserved a chance. Perhaps she could finally set things right. Jason sucked in a breath. With a last look at Luna, he turned back to the cabin and opened the door. The rocking chair was overturned and broken. Serena was on her back, covered in grease. Apparently, she had tried to stand on the chair to scrape the meat off the ceiling. Sitting up, she glanced guiltily at the chair. Somebody broke that." With a quiet sigh, Jason stepped over and offered his hand to Serena. "We have work to do." Transform. Jason and Serena stood on the shore of the lake. Luna observed passively from atop an old stump, cautiously optimistic. She wasn't entirely sure about the weapons Jason had put before sharing Serena to an open area, but it was too late to complain. "Okay," Serena agreed. "Moon, prism, power, make up." Jason didn't flinch from the momentary burst of energy that transformed Serena into Sailor Moon. Instead, he cast a discerning eye over her alternate form, quickly analyzing her combat mode. Studying his face, Luna saw the faintest traces of discipline. No armor, no shields, no increase in muscle tissue or height. Jason scanned her head. Sonic projectors? He looked down. Footwear hinders running speed. He scanned her uniform more closely. Light composition, energy blocking material? No. Sailor Scott has not been active long enough to allow such an adaptation. He scanned her face. An old tiara weapon. The disintegration variant. His eyes were drawn upward, then haircut. Combined with her face, she bore an uncanny resemblance to... No. He would not allow himself to think of her name.